Every town has its pleasant moments and every town has its tragic ones. And this is going to be one that when they talk about freedom being free, it is to everybody except the people that pay the price. And this interview is going to be about a young, beautiful Owl Falls girl that paid the price so that we can have our freedoms. Tell me a little bit about your daughter, Jaime, growing up.
She was the only girl with 3 boys. She was an instigator, a riot maker, and a mediator. She'd be all 3 at one time, or she'd be one at a time, and she liked the mediator part was probably not one of her big strong points. The instigator probably was.
Yeah.
She could pull a motor just as fast as one of her brothers. She could ride a horse. She could knock a horse down. She had a heart that was so big it was unreal.
So, when did Jaime decide on the military?
Well, the military came to her when she was in high school. She took the ASVAB test, as did all the other boys, and she scored extremely high, and they came to her right away. The Air Force and the Navy came to her, but at that point, you had to have your hair cut, and she had this really long, down to her waist, beautiful blonde hair that was wavy, and she refused to have her hair cut. In the end of 1998, she came to me and she said, "Mom, if I wanted to go into the Navy so I could earn money so I could become an emergency room nurse or a paramedic, would you please watch Kayla, or would you take care of Kayla for me so I could join the Navy?" And at that point I said, "Oh, okay. Are you sure that this is what you want?" And she told me, yeah, that's what she wanted, because she knew she couldn't have the money, and she knew I didn't have the money to pay for her schooling, and that's when she went in.
And how old was her daughter at that time?
Kayla was about 2 years old.
Okay. And you decided yes, like a mother would.
Oh yeah, that's easy. That was the easy part of the whole thing. She'd been in my house. Kayla and Jaime had been in my house since Kayla was about 13 months old. Jaime had gotten a divorce from one of the junkyard dogs, and she asked me if it was okay if she and Kayla came and lived with me, and I don't know that I even breathed or took a second thought. It was immediately, oh, of course, how soon can we move you?
And so, when did she enter the military then?
It was, she went in as a reservist, and she went in up in Minneapolis at Fort Snelling, and it was the end of 1998 that she went in.
And were you worried about your daughter going in the service?
Oh no, my daughter was tough as nails. There's no question about how tough my daughter was. You know, I raised her that way. I worked in a job that was a male-oriented job, and I knew that being a soft woman had its part, but being in a man's world did not. So I was not worried about her at all. She could shoot his gun as better than the boys could. She could ride a horse. She could do anything that the boys could do, and I was not worried about her one bit. War at that point, or her being deployed at that point, did not even enter my thought. So, no.
Now, when she joined the military, we weren't at war.
No, we were not at war when she joined the military. In 2000, when 9/11 happened, that's when the war began, you know. But when she joined, no, we were not at war. Finally, the day before Christmas, we heard for sure that she was going to be deployed. She wasn't here, and I got a call from her commanding officer, Chief Marasco, and he said, asked for her and told me his name, and I said, and what is this concerning? I'm her mother. And he, of course, couldn't divulge a whole lot, but he said this is her call up for deployment. And at that point I started crying, and I said, listen, I am virtually a single grandmother. I'm raising her daughter along with her. I have got a small business that she is running for me. I am disabled because of an accident at the post office that I had. And I said, please do not take my daughter away from me. And he said, ma'am, I will bring your daughter back home safe to you. And I said, is that a promise? He says, that's a promise. But he said, she's a valuable member of our unit, and we have to have her because she's one of our corpsmen. So it was the day before Christmas we heard that she was going to be deployed.
So what was her actual job then? You said a corpsman.
Yeah, a Navy corpsman is more or less a downgrade from a doctor. They can do everything a doctor can do, and I think she can even prescribe meds. The pack that she carried on a daily basis was about 16 pounds, and that was just her medical stuff. She did do simple surgeries. She did do a lot of little things. She stitched up stuff, so it's basically a watered down doctor.
Jamie leaves for overseas on March 1st.
Yes.
Could she call or write?
Yeah, we heard from her. Well, we didn't get too many letters from her. Kayla got a few, but by the time a letter gets here and back, but with this day and age, calls. We got lots of calls. Almost every day we got a call. If not every day, every other day we got a call.
And what would she say?
She would just more or less ask Kayla how school was going and how the horses were and how was her dog and how was her cat and wondering how things were going and just normal things that, nothing out of the ordinary, just normal things.
5th, 2006. A day you'll remember forever.
If I close my eyes, I can see exactly everything that happened the first
What did
3
you do
hours.
that morning?
It was windy and it was hot, and Kayla had a softball game over in Buckeye, and we were getting ready for that and talking about that. We did our normal horse chores, and we did some running around, and I called my mom and dad like I always did and stuff like that. But it was, it was summer break, and it was a nice, windy, warm day.
And you go to the ball game.
And Kayla gets the only hit and the only home run of the whole thing. Normally she's left-handed, and normally she got hit more than she got hits. And this time she didn't get hit, but she got a hit, and it was extremely exciting. One hit, and she won the game.
And so then you come home.
On the way home, I dropped my dad off, and we stopped at McDonald's and got ice cream cones because we were celebrating. And as we get to the driveway, I see this dark blue van with 2 Navy men in it, both of them in khaki uniforms. And it says United States Government on the license plates. And at that point, I knew that there was something horrible had happened.
And what goes on through your mind at that time? You thought something horrible's happened. I hope she's just injured.
That was my first thought. I'm praying all the way up the driveway that she's injured. The first thing I did was I said, Kayla, Grandma doesn't want her ice cream cone anymore. Will you please take it in and throw it away? And then check on the animals for me, please. And until Grandma calls you, please stay in the house. And that's what she did for me, She went in the house and she stayed in the house. He got out of the car and he had a manila folder under his arm. And the other guy that was with him was younger and had blonde hair. And I asked them, please tell me that she's just been injured. That's all I want to know, is that she's just been injured. I don't care how she's been injured. I'll take her any way you can get her back to me. And he said, ma'am, we're sorry to tell you, but the government of the United States has declared that she is dead. She passed away on the 5th of June. And then they asked me if there was somebody that they could call for me. And I told them I had to have my mom. So...
did you call your mom or did they call your mom?
They called my mom.
Okay.
They called my mom. And my mom and dad were here within 10 minutes.
And what was that reunion like between... I couldn't imagine of a worse call from a daughter to a father or mother.
I told my mom that Jamie had been killed, and my mom started crying right away. And when she got out here, she comforted Kayla Hurd. And she was crying and yelling out the window, Grandma, I have to know what's going on. And so she came out the door, and my dad got a hold of her first, and he said, your mom's... And so then I had to get Kayla right away and explain to her what had happened. And the first thing she says to me is, Grandma, you won't give me away, will you? I'll still be your little girl, won't I? And I said, you'll be my little girl for the rest of my life. And she's been my little girl for the rest of my life. You know, the first night was more or less just calling people and trying to get people there. The military people weren't there very long. It was more or less just to let us know what was going on, and they told me that they would be back right away in the morning and they would give me more information because they didn't know everything yet. Just that she had been killed instantly by an IED.
That's the roadside bomb.
That is a roadside bomb.
Did they tell you that, like example, we make the funeral arrangements, we want to give a military funeral, and this is what we would like you to agree to?
No, not that night. No,
Okay.
That was more or less just getting hold of ministers and getting hold of people and trying to sort ourselves out, because it was late by the time they got here. It was after 7, you know.
In the evening?
Yeah, and it was not, they did not give us a whole lot of information. That manila folder underneath that, I think it was a lieutenant commander's arm, you know, that was one thing that bothered me so bad. I wanted to know what was in that folder. I thought it was something I needed. I thought it was something I had to have. And finally, when they got ready to leave, I grabbed the manila folder, and do you know what I found inside of it? Absolutely nothing.
I think on their side that would have to be one of the worst jobs you could have, is being in the military and informing the people that this has happened to your most prized possession. After she was killed, how long was it until they brought her back to Iowa Falls for burial?
Well, we had kind of a problem. First off, again, my dad, that we were told not to tell anybody. We were told that the Navy would issue a statement, because the next day they told me that she was the first female to be killed in Iowa in combat ever. And he said, you know, there's going to be a whole lot of stuff because of this, and because of the fact that she's a female. So he said, you know, we've got to handle this quite carefully, because there's going to be a whole lot of attention to this. My dad, even though he knew he wasn't supposed to say something, went down to the newspaper, and they put it on the front page of the newspaper. AP and everybody in this country picked it up almost instantly, and my phone started ringing off the wall from all these reporters. I had reporters that would park across the road from the house and try and take pictures of Kayla, so I couldn't let Kayla go outside. They'd try and take pictures of us coming and going. They came so much as they would come up on the deck and try and get interviews. It was pretty horrific. It really was pretty horrific. And that kind of delayed things a little bit. my minister was on his way to a new parish, so he kind of needed to know when the funeral was because I wanted him. And so I kept pressing and pressing and pressing. But we did not get her back until Tuesday night of the following week. And Garrett, when Garrett got home from Lemoore with his family, they sent Garrett out to Dover to get her.
So she flew into Dover and then into Des Moines, and you picked her up in Des Moines.
No, she flew into Dover, and Garrett met her at Dover, and then Garrett was put in charge of bringing her home. Delta Airlines and American Airlines were the two that brought her home. They put a cardboard box over a casket when they bring them in, because they don't want people upset over what's being loaded onto the plane. And I think that kind of bothered Garrett because they put her casket into a cardboard box. But, you know, it is what it is. But he was allowed to get on and off the plane with her the whole time, and he flew her into Des Moines. And then she was met in Des Moines by some of the Patriot Guard and by fire stations, cop cars, sheriff's department cars. Boy, it was a long. I was amazed at all the people that came, and some of them came all the way from Des Moines. They didn't want to leave the procession, because as they went from one county to the next county, then the sheriffs were supposed to have left, and then a new sheriff was supposed to have picked them up and brought them to the next county, until finally in Hardin County. But I noticed that there was sheriff's cars from Story County and from Polk County that just kept coming with them. And then, of course, there was the highway patrol and police department and the fire department all came.
So they brought her to the funeral home in Iowa Falls.
Yes.
And they take is she still, the casket still in the box, or is that open?
No. Once they got her off the airplane, then the box came off, and then she was loaded into the Lynn's funeral home took care of her.
So tell me about at the funeral home.
The casket was closed. It was not that her injuries were so overwhelming. It was the fact that she had been in that casket since the 5th. That she'd been in a casket since the 5th, and they just didn't allow that. They did allow me to put my hand in there and touch her to know that she was in there.
But you couldn't look.
No, I could not look.
So they said you could. So they opened the casket up a little bit, and you felt her.
Yes, I could.
What
feel
was
her
going
chest.
through your mind?
That she was safe in God's arms. It's the most horrifying thing a parent can ever do, is burying a child. My circumstances are so